Okay. Um, so following along with listen and helping people feel calm. This is really important. And we're going to talk about this in our vignette coming up. Is that when people feel like they're in crisis and your attempts to slow the conversation down or your attempts to kind of invite them into um, trying to settle and stay focused don't work, and they just kind of each thing you say it's just ramping up, and you can literally hear them losing the ability to speak because they're gasping for air, or you feel because they're crying, or they just feel like they're kind of like floating away and losing contact with what's going on the phone and the conversation, or on the screen. um, you want to pause things at that point, not try to convince them that they're safe, not try to use sort of prefrontal cognitive strategies to say, hey, think, it's we got to deal with their body. And these are in extreme situations, but I think they deserve to be talked about because you may get into a situation where someone's body just takes over, and the panic isn't so much in their mind as it is now in their physiology. It's presenting in the way they breathe, their inability to sit still. I mean, pay attention, those kind of things. So we want to help say, hey, let's pause. I feel like we need to come back down to the conversation, and I'm going to help you do that. So let's just put all the conversation aside, and let's just focus on um, finding your feet on the floor. So will you just let's tap our feet together. So if you're sitting in your chair, I want you to just I'm going to do it with you, and I'm just going to tap your feet. So that's a strategy you use to help them connect with themselves. Or you have them tap their hands. You say, hey, let's tap our hands on the table, or let's tap our fingers on the table. Then you help them connect to their surroundings. So you say, okay, I want you to let's stop and look out a window. If you're in a room with a window, great. Or how about pay attention to the doorknob? If they're in a room with a doorknob, again, sounds kind of nutty, but like when someone is literally losing contact with reality, what you're doing is you're bringing their mind back to something. And at the very least, they may think, well, why is he asking me to look out the window? Well, now you've got them present. See, now their mind is clicked out of that floating away, and they're even just considering the silliness of the request. That's helping them stay present. Um, but the hope is that there isn't resistance, and they do, even though they may think that it's silly, they actually go along with you if you're doing it with them, and they bring them back to reality. And of course, the last one, and this is really important, especially when you have someone who's crying uncontrollably, can't catch their breath. You have them focus on the breath. Helps bring their attention and bring us a sense of calmness. Now, it may not, bring them back to, uh, peace, but it does help them. It stops the progression of them moving away from you and deeper so into crisis. Okay, so here we're looking at good communications, thing to say and do. Again, this is reference stuff. Some of it will be intuitive. I'll just go with the first one. Let them know you hear them. For example, nod your head, use key vocalizations like because then think about it, we're on a screen, and so you have to sort of be a demonstrative in order for someone to pick up sort of the normal facial expressions, nodding, things that we would intuitively do non-consciously in person. Now we're doing on a screen, so our minds have to have a little bit more exaggeration. So I'm nodding my head. Can you guys nod your head on the screen with me? There you go. Yes. So that's something that it may feel silly to you, but they're going to see it and go, oh, they're listening to me. They're paying attention. I can see them. They're at least communicating with you non-verbally. But that also helps bring a sense of connection and calmness. Okay. So you guys can look at this. Things not to say. We've talked about some of these. The hardest one, I think, in our context, because we're all going through the same thing. We all have a story. So someone's going to tell you a story, and it would be hard not to say, oh, let me tell you what happened to me last week, and kind of not because you want to one-up them, but just because you're trying to relate to them and talk about what's difficult. But sometimes that can shut them down. So let's stick with verbal cues, nodding, physical cues, but try to stay away from doing the story pile where we just kind of commiserate through our worst fears and stories. Because remember, we're trying to pull people back, not just connect with them.